Thank you for Patreon now for donating to the Patreon.
Hey guys, Vanyazo, back on our Card Fight Vanguard deck profile. So if you guys enjoyed, don't like, comment, subscribe, and sorry. This time we're covering set 12, Stoicheia, Magnolia Masques. I don't know how to feel about this one. I remember, everyone kept saying that, oh, we are getting these cards that support Jackalope markers that are Sylvan Horned Beast. They must mean Masques. I love how when I said it, no one believed me. Not with this one. I said it with something else. But then when other people say, oh yeah, it's a whole bandwagon train. But the thing I hate about this the most, I really didn't want there to be a Magnolia Masques, and it had to be one. I feel bad for the guy that said it wasn't going to be one because I actually firmly believed him. And he was so confident. He was like, don't come crying to me when it's not a Masques. And man, I feel bad for him. And I was going to get started, shall we? This deck is interesting to say the least. And I can't think of a better phrase to describe it than that. So let's go. First up, we have our starter in Sylvan Horned Beast Lotte. Grade 0 boost, 5k shield, 6k base. Auto road point for whistling and draw card. Standard starter. Nothing special about it, just a free draw if you win second. The rest of the ride line does not require this at all, but might as well go for theme. And honestly, it's a cute starter, so why not run this as your starter? Am I right? One of Lotte, again, it's not required, but it's cute, and that's my reasoning for running it. Then we have our trigger, switch running the over trigger, Source Dragon, Deity of Blessings, Blessfavor as a grade 0, 50k shield, boost, 5k power, over trigger, you mail him over trigger in your deck or reveals as a trigger, move that card, draw a card, choose one of units, and move for the turn, and if you reveal it during your draft check, activate its additional effect, which you can draw a card, choose a unit, gets +1 crit, all your firm gets plus 10k, and if your damage is the same number of cards your opponents or more, choose a card from damage, go and heal it. All around, pretty solid. It's an everything bagel. I always describe it as that, and it's always one of my favorite over triggers to talk about because you always get the guaranteed 1 million draw regardless if you drive check this or damage check this. But if you drive check this, on top of that 1 million in a draw, you get an additional draw. Someone gets a crit. Your front row gets 10, and you possibly get a heal out of it. If you see this at a certain point in the game, it kind of guarantees you a win. Like, in my opinion, the best time to see it is probably first grade 3 turn, because depending on how you play, that may be the turn where you have more damage than your opponent. You'll definitely get the most resource out of it because you'll get the heal, you'll get the 10k, you'll probably get the push because you have 1 million and someone with a crit on board if it isn't the same unit, and then you get 2 draws out of it. Like, all around Blessfavor, I love because as my favorite overtrigger because while it doesn't necessarily guarantee the win unless it's like late enough into the game, it definitely allows for comeback possibility on both sides, and it just like kind of restarts the game, or at least in my opinion, it kind of does. So one of Blessfavor, very solid over, nice to have. You can run Valinut if you want for multi-attack, but I prefer Blessfavor. Then we have our normal triggers, 3 copies of Sylvan Horned Beast Valen, grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 5k base. I mainly run Valen just because it's Sylvan Horned Beast. I don't really like if there was more triggers that were Sylvan Horned Beast that wasn't a front, I would run them, but they're not. So 3 of Valen on the simple grounds of Sylvan Horned Beast, nothing else. Then we have 4 copies of Sylvan Horned Beast Planar, same reasoning for Valen. Grade 0 boost, 5k shield, 5k base. Draw trigger is just nice to have. It helps increase hand. It's also the one I don't hate the most when I see it off of Charis skill, which inevitably happens. So worst case scenario, I'm at least calling this thing so I'm not losing too much card power, so there's that. Then we have 4 crits in Sylvan Horned Beast Jackalope, the crit that I swear this one chooses when it wants to show up. It either wants to help me win the game or just doesn't want to show up at all. It's one of the two. It's never either or. It's never both. It's either or, never in between. Grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 5k power. Just a standard critical trigger. You get the crit, you get the 10. There's not much more to say about it. Then we have our standard heal in Sylvan Horned Beast Zlatarog. Grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 5k power. Standard heal, not just about it. I don't like the effect too much. I mean, yeah, they're more shield if you have their ability off with 25k, but I'd rather have a consistent 15k than a fluctuating 10 and 25. That's pretty much how it is. Again, these triggers are simply run because they're all Sylvan Horned Beasts. I know that's a dumb idea, but do I care? No. So take that as you will. Now move on to our non-trigger units. First up, we have 2 copies of, in order I will find a way to run into all of my decks pretty much, and I am glad I did it here because it actually pulled off a very fun combo, and that is Wild Intelligence. Grade 0, normal order, play it by counterblasting 1. You would think that would be a hefty cost in this deck, but it's really not. Believe it or not, CB is only a problem on first grade 3 turn. That is it. Like, first grade 3 turn is the only time you're going to have CB problems. That's specifically if your opponent locks you to 2 CB. If they lock you to 2 CB or less, you will have CB problems on only that turn. If they give you more than 2 CB, I promise you will not have a CB problem that entire game. I swear, because that has been my experience with this deck. Anyways, mill top 3. Go to one card with the same grade as your Vanguard or lower from your drop zone, call it your rear guard. And your Vanguard has Sylvan Horn Beast King Magnolia Chip to 2 instead of 1. All around pretty solid because you can use the Mass Superior Ride skill during any point during your main phase. So say for example you're on regular Magnolia and then you play Wild Intelligence to mill the top 3 while you're on regular Mag. You can then call 2 cards to rear guard circle, and then since you have the Mask and drop zone already, if this didn't mill it in there, you can just send it to Soul and Persona. All around, it works very well with the Mask actually because again it can hit into drop zone. You can play it before you play the Mask if it's already in drop. It's just all around really nice to have, and it can get rear guards. And again, it's not restricted to being on mag just to get the single call, but it is restricted to get the 2 call. Very nice order. I love it a lot. It's very consistent when I do it, and it's just nice to have. So 2 of Wild Intelligence. I will find a way to run this as long as I can. I'm not kidding you. This is one of the decks that took the longest for me to build, not because everything else was hard to build, because I literally sat there for 5 minutes exactly, because I timed it, just to see, is there a way I can run this in the deck consistently without this being a minus? And I looked at it, and I refused to get rid of it until I was sure that there was no other way, and I was right that there was a way. 2 of Wild Intelligence. Then we have 3 copies of Sylvan Horn Beast Cyril. I swear this was out of 4 of, but apparently it was out of 3 of the entire time. Great on boost, 5k shield, 8k base. Every time I look at this, I see this now as like legs, so its dreadlocks are its legs, and this is just something else in the background, and so is this. And then it's like its eyes for some reason, like, you know how like sometimes in TV shows like deers will randomly like be on like 2 feet and then they'll just be like warriors from hell? Yeah, that's pretty much what I see in this thing outside of like its pretty antlers. Anyways, auto when it's placed on rearguard circle from deck or your hand. Oh, I never realized it could work from deck. If you have a Vanguard Sylvan Horn Beast and its card name, Soul Boss 1 in the top 5, to 1 card with Magnolia, its card name from Untitled reveal, put it to hand, show deck. All around pretty solid. That is the other, well, okay, that's not necessarily the other reason why you run the Lotte, because a Lotte wouldn't proc off this. I mean, you could still use it if you didn't ride, but you wouldn't be able to call anything unless it was a trigger. But you know, being able to proc off that ability regardless of what unit you're on, as long as it's Sylvan Horn Beast, is pretty nice. And it can search any Magnolia, so it can search OG, it can search Elder, it can search Mask, which is just nice to have. And then continues rear guard. If you have a grade 3 guard with Vanguard Magnolia's card name, your Persona Ride increases the power of your back row units as well. Okay, I'm pretty sure how the logic works behind this is even if you Persona Ride after you, or sorry, if you Persona Ride before you call this, I'm pretty sure even if you call this that turn, if you did Persona Ride, it still gives the bonus to the entire board. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm 95% sure that's how it works, because that's technically how it works with the order from Thegria, where even if you already Persona Rode, it's when you set it, it still increases the power if you haven't done it yet. But either way, though, pretty nice to have, especially in a deck that focuses a lot more on the Persona aspect. Being able to increase that power is even better, or like its power output overall. And then again, being able to search either the Masques or Magnolia is all around pretty nice to have. So easy 3 of. It also looks really cool. I love the blue flower / butterfly. And then we have 4 copies of our PG Planar Prevent Dragon. I'm starting to think the more I love Custodial Dragon, the more Planar Prevent refuses to show up, because I'm starting to realize in the decks I run Planar Prevent in, it literally doesn't show up anymore. I'm starting to think I hurt his feelings, and I'm sorry. Great on boost, 0-6k base, continuous Sentinel. You have to force Sentinels in deck and also put on guard circle. Choose one of units, it cannot be hit till the battle, and if your hand is true or more cards, choose a card from discard it. Standard PG, nothing to specify, it's just a free place on guard circle, and then and only then if you have 2 other hand cards, you are forced to discard one. But if you only have 1 or less, you don't have to go, which is great because that means you can be as aggressive as you want in the early game, and you definitely want to be aggressive in the early game to make sure that your grade 3 push, whether you're Persona Riding or not, is going to hurt your opponent like hell. So being able not to have to drop something when your opponent counterattacks your big rush turn is pretty nice to have. Again, I say you can run Custodial Dragon because they have the exact same skill. Honestly, if I wasn't so dead set on the moral of OG Magnolia came around the time of Planar Prevent Dragon, meaning I should run that, I would honestly try Custodial Dragon because, like I said, Planar Prevent is choosing to show up less in my hand and more in my damage zone. It worries me, and I'm sorry that I've offended Planar Prevent in any way, shape, or form. Can you please stop showing up in my damage zone? I need PGs against big swinger decks for Planar Prevent. Then we have our last grade 1, so the grade 1 on the ride deck, none in the main deck, because it is technically possible, obviously, to call it out from Soul. Well, not necessarily from Soul in this deck, that kind of tells you what one card in this deck isn't, but you can Soul Blast it out with stuff like Cyril, and then just use Wild Intelligence to fetch it out from drop. And that is Sylvan Horn Beast Charis, grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base. Auto, when rode upon by Sylvan Horn Beast Lattice, you may reveal the top card of your deck. If it's a grade 2 less unit card, you can call that card to rear guard, or you have to call the card to rear guard. If it isn't, put it to Soul. Ah, yes, one of the best and worst abilities in the game, in my opinion. A lot of people complain about Fort being a horrible grade 1, considering, like, they're like, oh, if you see the over. No one ever complains about Charis, and to be fair, I don't think anyone actually uses the Magnolia line with Magnolia. But to be fair, though, Charis was always worse than Fort, because at least with Fort, it was either going to rear guard or it was going to drop zone. That's only if it was an order. With Charis, if it's not specifically a grade 2 or less unit card, it is going into the soul. So, I mean, granted it gets you soul, but like still, at least Bastion's line at least gave you one more, or not necessarily one more option. When we got grade 4s, it gave you 2 more options, grade 3s and grade 1s, grade 3s and grade 4s to call, but this one only gives you 2, or technically 3. And then continues back or rear guard circle during the battle. This unit tactic gets plus 5k power. Again, it's possible to call from drop zone, but you're rarely going to swing with this from the back row. You really want to swing with this from the back row if you're playing against a nuke deck and your opponent nuked every option on your board, or if you bricked hard and the only things you're seeing consistently are triggers in your hand. So one of Charis in the right deck possibly can flip over a unit. Charis is 50-50. Sometimes he sends the mask to soul. He's only done that once so far, but I remember whenever I would use Elder, he would sometimes soul charge Elder, so a little bit worried about him, but for now he hasn't fucked me over yet, especially in this deck that doesn't actually need soul that much, so there's that. But one of Charis in the right deck. Then we move on to our grade 2s, 3 copies of Sylvan Horned Beast Cornmus. Always, even though its name is so simple, I continue. Oh, I knew I misspelled it. It always just feels so weird saying it because it just looks weird. Grade 2 instead 5k shield, 10k base. It is a beautiful art though. Continues rear guard. If this unit's on a rear guard circle with Joker 2 marker on, this unit gets auto, and when it intercepts, it gets plus 5k shield ton to battle, and it gets 5k power during active during both players' turns. So that's nice. It's good. It's a free 15k during both players' turns, and during your turn specifically, it's a 20k at the very least. If we combine it with Mask, it's 30k. The reason, in my opinion, why this is bad is because in this deck, you want to fill up your back row first with Jackalope Tree markers, and Mask doesn't allow you to intercept with your stuff in back row, meaning you're essentially losing out on a 10k guard if you actually play this deck the way it's supposed to be played. Is that annoying? Yes. Does it sometimes make guarding a little bit worrying? Also, yes. But does it stop this deck from winning? Hell no. So, 3 of Corvus definitely allows for pressure because, again, if you combine it full well with the Mask, it's a 30k base without Persona, right? And if we throw Cyril into it, it's 40k base without any other skills or triggers. So 3 of Cornmus adds for pressure when you need to add for pressure. Then we have 3 copies of Sylvan Horned Beast, Gun, and Sola. I always forget to change out the Y for the I. I literally never do. A lot of people, or at least from like what I remember, people have been questioning if you should run this or not. I'm going to run it anyways because I have yet to see a problem with running it, and it still works relatively well with me. Great 2 instead 5k shield, 10k base, auto, back, or rear guard circle. When this unit swings, counterblast one, choose one of your other rear guards, it gets plus power to end of turn. So, increase power at the time. So, if, like, he's a guaranteed 25 if you're on the Mask. So, being able to pump 25 something, maybe even 35 if you have Cyril is just nice to have. But, yeah, this deck does have a small CV problem, like I said, or it does if your opponent locks you at specifically 2 damage at first grade 3 turn, but then past that you don't really have a CB problem. Yeah, being able to hit with a big number and then an even bigger number on top of that, both of which being 2 card drops unless your opponent sees at least 1 trigger during the damage check beforehand, is pretty nice to have. There's not much more I can say about it. Does it eat up a little bit of CB if you play more than 1? Hell yeah, but you don't need more than 1 when you're trying to beat the shit out of your opponent with something that's already a 30k base. So 3 of Gun and Soul, very solid grade 2. Don't throw down more than 1 at the same time. I promise you will regret it unless you know you can kill that turn. Then we have 4 copies of Sylvan Horned Beast Alpin, the thing that mitigates the counterblast problem. Grade 2 instead 5k shield, 10k base. I remember I used to hate this card, then I immediately started loving it once I used the skill, and I've now adored this llama. Anyways, auto rear guard. When this unit attacks a Vanguard, if you have a Vanguard Magnolia's card name, regardless of its Mask, Elder, or Regular, this unit gives 5k power to on the battle for every 2 grade 2 or greater units on your board. And then if the team got 10k or more by this effect, at the end of the battle, bind this unit to countercharge 1 and soul charge 1. All around pretty solid because it's not a mandatory bind because it is a cost skill, so if you just want to give it the power and then not bind it, that's nice to have. But also, being able to both countercharge 1 and soul charge 1, 2 decently played resources in this deck, it's pretty nice that he can do it for free as long as he got at least 10k. And because he does count himself with this skill, and obviously you have to be at Magnolia, so that counts 2 units. So literally all you have to do is have 2 more grade 2 or greater units, and you're pretty solid. 4 of Alpin, very solid grade 2, gets countercharge, gets soul charge, does it for free, and gets numbers for free as well. Wasn't like about it, easy 4 of. Then the card that is in here simply because it is required. I am not joking. The triggers obviously have to be Sylvan Horned Beast. The PGs always get the pass. The only reason this is not a Sylvan Horned Beast is because it is physically impossible to play Masques in this deck consistently without running either of the two Draco Tree makers. So I had to run this. I could have run Bit Alvitas, however you say that thing's name, because it is more similar to a Sylvan Horn Beast, but like if I'm gonna have to break the theme, I'm at least gonna break it for the more consistent one. So, and that is Draco Tree Wretch Dept Illithid. Grade 2 NSF 5k shield, 10k base. Auto when placed on rearguard circle by counterbossing one and soul bossing one. Choose one of your rearguards with any Draco Tree markers on them, put a Draco Tree marker on it, then search extra one Mask of Hydrogum, reveal it, put it to your hand, and shuffle your deck. All around, pretty solid, you know, again, simple CB and soul boss, doesn't matter what grade you're on, free Draco Tree marker, and then mass search, which then can be used to search for Magnolia Masques. And the best part about this is, oh, look at that. Not a once per turn. Not a name once per turn either. Oh, look at that. Doesn't specifically have to be placed from any words. It has to be placed on rear. Oh, look at that. A card that can call stuff from drop. Oh, look at that. A card that can call two things from drop, regardless of their names if you're on regular Magnolia. Oh, look at all the CB we can use. Yeah, this is what I mean. Like, if your opponent doesn't lock you at 2 CB for first grade 3 turn, you pretty much can hit, like, 3 markers or 2 markers in a turn for off of your Dept Illithid. So yeah, I remember the first game I played with this deck actually. I think I had to delete it because there was a problem with game lag or the camera, one of the two. But pretty much the first opening hand I ever had with this deck, straight up after the mulligan, which was 3 triggers, I drew 3 Dept Illithids, and I thought to myself, did I shuffle? And I was like, I had to have shuffled. There's no way I didn't. I flipped over the bottom of the deck. There was no triggers at the bottom, so I was like, okay, so I did shuffle, and I flipped it back up. And I didn't bother shuffling because I was like, it's fine. It's a trigger at the bottom of the deck. And then my first draw comes around. It was the last Dept Illithid. That means all 4 copies of Dept Illithid were right next to each other. And I sat there for a solid minute thinking, is this possible? Do you want to know what the other 2 cards in my hand were at the time? Magnolia Masques and the Mask of Hydrogum. I thought to myself, how? How is this possible? Why? Who? What? When? Where? How? Why? What god did I piss off for this to be the first hand I have with this deck? Either way, 4 copies of Dept Illithid. Very nice. It is required because it gets the 3 Draco Tree markers in the back row consistently. You can kill it, and then you can call it. It gets the order search. Again, you can run Bit Avis too because they both make markers, but I'd rather get the one that has the surge, even if it takes up an extra soul blast. 4 Dept Illithid. Then we have our last grade 2, it's the grade 2 of the ride deck, 1 in the ride deck, none in the main deck of Sylvan Horn Beast Lattice. Grade 2 set 5k shield, 10k base, auto and Rotopon by Sylvan Horn Beast Team Magnolia. By Soul Blasting 1, you can reveal the top card of your deck, and if it's a unit card, call that card to rear guard circle. If it isn't, put it to your hand. All around pretty solid because it bounces the order to hand if you need it, such as Mask of Hydrogum, or, you know, the thing that initiates the combo of send this to drop zone, then call 2 of them at the same time to get more markers, and then, you know, or you just get a free unit to board, which also can proc out this thing's go, so there's that. And then auto backward rear guard circle. When this unit attacks the Vanguard, Soul Boss 1, it gets plus 10k power to the battle. Again, like Charis, because we have, I don't know, free 30k, free just big number beat stick, thing that is required for resource management, and then thing that's probably going to take up like at least a part of the board simply because you spam them down to make Draco Tree markers. Yeah, that you only kind of call this if your board gets nuked and you have no better options. So, but implying the fact that you could call from drop zone in the first place, you probably have access to better options. So 1 of Lattice in the ride deck, not the worst thing in the world to call or swing with in back row, just not the best thing compared to everything else we have, but 1 of in the ride deck, none in the main deck. And then move on to our grade 3s. First, we're in 2 copies of Mask of Hydrogum. Grade 3, normal order, look at the top 5 cards of your deck to 1 unit card of Draco Tree or Masques card from Unreveal, put it to hand, shuffle your deck. I rarely hit Masques Magnolia off this. I most of the time hit a Dept Illithid off this. But thankfully, so far, this has been the one deck where I've always hit something off with this effect. So I don't really have to care about what I hit, because at least I'm getting something out of it. So 2 of in that regard already. And then act drop zone. If you have a grade 3 Vanguard without Masques card name, reveal a grade 3 with Masques card name from your hand, rather reveal card's cost to stand. And if you road, put this card to soul, and then if your opponent's Vanguard is a grade 3 grade, and you do not persona this turn, you can activate persona ride. All around pretty solid, can add more numbers. If you combine it with Serral, that's a free persona ride to the entire board, plus Magnolia Masques, who could possibly give back row attack, depending on how many of these things you've seen the entire game. All around, very solid order. It also gets soul, so it's nice to have for Dept Illithid spamming. 2 of Mask of Hydrogum, just nice card. Then we have 4 copies of probably one of my favorite masks in terms of art. Not gonna lie, because I really love the red wings, and I like how his claws actually change colors in like this background, and like his like small halo turncoats, and like it just feels like it fits so well. The only thing I hate about this is his face, because like the purple just makes it look like he's dying. And that is Sylvan Horned Beast King of Calamity, Magnolia Masques. The other thing I like about this card is name. Grade 3 turn up persona 13k base. Continuous, this card can only be written from a grade 3 with Magnolia's card name. Continuous Vanguard during your turn. All your rear guards on rear guard circles, Draco markers on them can attack from back row and get plus 10k power. That is why I hate this card, because that entire ability for him to attack from back row, and this ability requires back row attack, requires you to get Draco Tree markers. So if you miss Adept Elwood, then fuck you. And then the other skill is active Vanguard Circle once per turn. Remove a Magnolia when it's a different card in from your hand, soul, or drop zone. And this unit gets auto Vanguard. When your rear guard attacks from the back row, choose one of your opponent's rear guards, kill it until end of turn. So it's not a hard once per turn. So in this deck, the max you can swing from back rows 3 times. So you know, being able to get a free 3 kill swing is pretty nice as well. And then also if you find a way to restand your back row, call stuff over in the back row, cool, you get more kills. Again, I say the issue with this deck is for this thing to get back row attack, you actively have to have Draco Tree markers. So sometimes it's actually better just to not go to this at all unless you really want that Persona Ride power, because great God, being locked out of back row sucks. I remember the first game I played, I put the Draco Tree marker in front row, not remembering that I had to have them in back row, and it sucked. The deck did not have any single aggressive power whatsoever, because I only saw one Adept Elwood that entire game. But all around though, it's a pretty solid skill though. If you're wondering in response why I only run the one Adept Elwood when you can consider running both Bit, Alvist, and this, is because I see Adept Elwood more than enough. Like I said, the very first game I played with this deck, I saw 3 copies of it in my opening hand after the mulligan, and then the 4th one was drawn automatically. I have never missed a single Adept Elwood in my entire games of playing this deck. I'm not joking. So I have no reason to run Bit, like, especially because the deck already has a good CB ratio, and I know if I were to add it over anything that isn't Wild Intelligence, which again, I'm going to keep this as long as I can, I know it would cause me CB problems. So if it's between keeping this and taking a small risk that isn't really a risk, or increasing my chance of seeing something, but instead of losing a card I really like, I'd rather take that chance. So take that as you will. Then we have the last card in the deck, one of in the ride deck, one of in the main deck, of Sylvan Horned Beast King Magnolia. Grade 3, turn persona 13k base. Auto Vanguard. When this at the end of this unit attack counter boss 1, choose one of your rear guards until end of turn. That unit can attack from back row, and it gets plus 5k per persona row this turn, and choose 3 rear guards instead of 1. All around pretty solid. Sad news is because you can't really persona ride off from this into this. You can only persona ride from this into this, thanks to this over here. You know, you're only going to probably get 5k at most, unless you just don't say a single copy of this and you just hard persona ride this one. But, you know, being able to still get multi-attack is pretty nice. Again, though, your first grade 3 turn, you're pretty much spending all your CB on Adept Elwood. So, yeah, just to make sure, you know, you can get your setup and all that stuff. So your resources might be a little spared, so you might not get the multi-attack, but if you can get the multi-attack off, good for you. So one of regular Magnolia in the ride deck, one of in the main deck. Doesn't do much past first grade 3 turn outside of being fodder for this thing skill. And then we have 5 Draco Tree markers. You know, they don't go in your deck, they just go in like or they don't go into your main deck, they just go on the, you know, like where your tokens would go. Anyways, during your turn, if you have Vanguard, Draco Tree, or Masques in its card name, all your units on the circle get plus 5k power. Very nice, you know, they help increase numbers, and they make your rear guards a little bit more deadly. Here's the thing, this does nothing, because they basically act as a trigger for Magnolia's skill to go off, because those fuckers already get plus 10 off this thing's skill. If you combine Sarah with its Persona Ride, they're already 20k bases, and then literally everything else kind of says the rest for themselves. So the power doesn't really do anything as much as just like a limiter restrictor on Magnolia Masques. And that's it for the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you're wondering why I don't run Elder, it's because the deck kind of felt a little already felt like I had space problems, and like I said, like I had to think real hard how I wanted to build this deck without dropping Wild Intelligence, so I'm not gonna care more about Elder than a card I like a lot more than Elder, but also in the sense of, because the deck is more focused on the Masques, I felt like it'd be appropriate to focus more on the evil than the light within with Magnolia Elder. Take that as you will. Is that dumb? Probably, but I don't care. It's just how it is. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, join Discord, follow Twitch, and I'll see you all in the next one. Don't forget to stand up your Vanguards.